Hello, this is BOOKP0T. This is a show where we, as three people who do not read, are getting back into reading. One of the first books in the effort of trying to read, we picked up from my recommendation for the first one, Kitchen Confidentials by Anthony Bourdain. And
rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain.
Rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain.
Yes.
Before we start anything, this book kind of fell into my sort of scope because of the movie that is coming out pretty soon called Tony, Matt Johnson director, and I was a huge fan of the show, obviously No Reservations and Parts Unknown, which are his travel show that is not talked about in this book, but it's talked about in the interview afterwards and the afterword in the book. But this is, it kind of fell into my scope then, and then kind of started reading from there, and then I recommend it to you guys. And this is just an effort to actually start reading because none of us are huge readers. I did listen to part of this on audiobook, not all of it, just one chapter because it came up on if you have Spotify Premium, you can get a bunch of audiobooks. Sadly, we're not sponsored. I'll take an email though. But you can listen to the audiobook and he does the narration for it. So I did listen to Pinot Noir, which is one of the later chapters that we're going to talk about, but he narrated that, and that's honestly pretty good. It's a pretty good audiobook. I don't know if audiobook is cheating now. People who read more than me can argue that if they think audiobook is cheating or not when it comes to reading. From now on, every page is going to be read, but for the one chapter, I'll confess right here now, I did listen to one audio chapter. It was good though.
I don't want to rip into you too hard here, Taishi, but we did at the beginning of this agree that we can't listen to the audiobook.
We didn't agree on anything.
I think we did, didn't we?
No, we did not.
I don't think we agreed on anything.
That's a false
but
fallacy.
I do think that it is kind of.
However, I will say I am jealous.
He tried.
I am jealous that you listened to a chapter of this on audiobook because in my head when I was reading this the entire time, I was like, I could have Anthony Bourdain's voice reading all this to me, but instead
I did put his voice in my head when
it's
reading
impossible
it,
not to read this book and hear Anthony Bourdain narrating.
You
the
are
entire
very right.
thing. Of course, because I mean his writing is exactly how he writes his narrations in all of his travel shows, and it's incredible. I love. He's a fantastic orator, and he's a fantastic writer, and his writing is very. It's funny because when I was reading through this, I was like, man. If huge like social media platforms were around like at this time, can you imagine how good of a fucking poster Anthony Bourdain would have been in like 1999 or 2000 when he was
I
writing
hate that
this?
that's where your fucking mind went. I hate you.
Well, no, I just mean that kind of like in like a modern sense of writing, because I mean this book was written 26 years ago at this point. It released in 2000. He has a very modern way of writing, and where it's like all the way that his sentences are structured and like his commenting on everything is very kind of like a modern kind of sense. Like it's a very interesting way to read it, in my opinion, with how his writing style, which made this read such a fun time. Like the passages just kind of flow by, and
absolutely. It's such like a cynical, like realist way of writing that it's like there's no fluff, there's no bullshit. He's telling you like it is, how he sees it, and he's a witty guy, so it's just kind of naturally funny. And a lot of the stuff that he talks about, and the way he describes a lot of the stuff, I mean, he's very good at bringing humor into things that not necessarily would be humorous. I mean, just even in describing himself and his fellow cooks, our band of pirates, we're a bunch of mercenaries and ne'er-do-wells. Like, I don't know if he means to embellish it or like make it humorous, but it is funny when you look at it, because it's like, this guy and his coworkers, the band of pirates.
No, there's definitely I agree with all that. There's definitely a room of self-awareness in the writing that comes from all of that, or that stems from all that, and I think that's what makes it so endearing for me, at least, having and reading it, and just how it like you said, it's such an easy read because it flows like that butter that he's talking about. It's
that warm butter.
That warm butter.
Every chef uses.
And
Don't
if
let
you
them
think
lie
they
to
aren't,
you.
if you think they aren't adding it, they're adding it.
You're eating
I
a
can
shit
believe
ton of
that's
butter.
not butter.
Oh yeah, I searched dogging on margarine.
That shit ain't real.
It's also interesting though, because when you recommended Kitchen Confidential, in my head I was like, okay, I mean, I watched Anthony Bourdain, his show, when I was a kid, like all the time. It was one of my favorites to just throw on. Like it was kind of like a trinity of like, okay, I'm gonna watch either Pawn Stars, or I'm gonna watch Anthony Bourdain, or I'm gonna watch Top Gear. Those were kind of like the things that I would tab between when I was scrolling through the channels, and of course like cartoons and whatnot. But I knew in my head that he wrote this book, but I wasn't really super cognizant of it until you recommended it. And I don't care about cooking or the restaurant industry. I've never worked at a restaurant. The closest I've come to food service was working in the bakery at a grocery store for like a month. That is the closest that I've come to actually working in a quote unquote kitchen, really. I didn't work fast food. I didn't do any of that. I did just regular like big box retail for these kind of jobs. So seeing like an insider talk about the nitty gritty of actually working in a kitchen, and one of my past relationships anyway, they were in the service industry, like in a restaurant, and I would hear stories all the time about kitchen dynamics and like front of house stuff from like the worker's perspective. And reading this book, I was like, yeah, okay, all this does very much like track with everything that I've heard about it. But I know you, John, you've worked in fast food
Yeah, I
before.
used to work at Wendy's, and it's funny, like I felt like reading this, I was like, because he does kind of address this later in the book where he's like, everything I say is like, it's sweeping generalizations, and here, let me talk about Scott Bryan to tell you why everything I said is just wrong. I wasn't reading it as like, man, you're wrong, none of this happened to me, but I was worried, like when I worked at Wendy's, it wasn't, people being overly sexual and, making those jokes and being a hard ass to each other and, not necessarily hazing, but it's just like that was the culture back then, and that's how they all got along. And I feel like I didn't necessarily have that experience because of the times we were brought up in, it's, when I started working at Wendy's, it was 2016, 2017 in the Pacific Northwest. Like, it's very liberal, progressive. Things are going to be a lot more, strict in terms of like HR code and stuff like that. So it was very cookie cutter behavior when I was working at Wendy's.
I do imagine it's definitely probably different for, like small local kind of restaurants, like mom and pop kind of restaurants.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why reading this was a fresh perspective. It's like, it felt like when I worked at Wendy's, I had like a totally different experience on the food industry than he did, which going into it, he has something in the beginning of the book where he's like, anybody that's worked in the food industry will be able to read this and kind of understand something or take something from it. And I feel like, not necessarily that I didn't take anything from it, but I was like, wow, I can't relate to any of this. And maybe that's what I take from it, is like, holy shit, this whole new perspective. Like, this is really cool.
Right. And Taishi, you never worked in a restaurant setting, have you?
I was gonna say my only real food experience is like helping out at a Ren fair, cooking some food, and then I worked inside of a grocery store at a deli for a couple nights, and then I was that guy that he explains in his I believe it's one of the chapters where he's talking about the people who aren't sous chefs and aren't a part of the team. Like, I'd clean the meat department after everybody left, so that was something.
You were the bus boy?
Yeah, after work in big leather boots, squeaking around and dusting off bad protein.
Blue uniform as was per custom.
Yeah, oh my god.
Cleaning those departments it's hell on
Cleaning
earth.
the meat department is a disgusting, protein-soaked, just soapy hell that I got drowned in. But it could be worse, is what I would say. And you know what? I look at this and I go, it could be worse. I could have some nights. I could have served 200 dishes.
I'd also like to talk about kind of our relationship with food in general. So I think it's an interesting topic. Everyone kind of has a different sort of relationship with what they eat. Yeah, it's like some people are, they eat a lot. They eat 3-4 times a day, all full meals every time. Some people do not do that. Some people are kind of snackers. Some people don't really think about their food a whole lot. They just kind of try to just eat whatever. They don't really think about it. Like for me, I kind of think about it a little bit. I wouldn't fancy myself a chef or a cook or anything like that. Like the majority of my culinary adventure tendencies stop and end in Italian, to be honest. Like, I don't really have a huge foray in having...
You don't know French cooking?
No, I do not know French cooking. And honestly, every time he talked about it, I was like, this doesn't sound very good for me anyway.
You're that Friday crowd that if wild hair was on the menu, that's not for you, buddy.
The thing is,
that's not for you.
I do like trying things, and I think his rationale on that is so true, because it can just open up your mind to things that you just wouldn't have ever once considered before. I don't think I've ever tried anything and immediately regretted the fact that I tried it. It just takes so much for me to go try something. And that's just not even just only food. That's just shit in general.
It kind of almost feels like, I don't want to say that's the message, But it's like, I mean, it opens with him talking about what inspired him to fall in love with food and become a foodie in the first place. And it ends with him kind of like being like, this is my life. I did it, but I don't regret any of it. Like, I love food. I still wake up today. Like, I do it because I love it. At the beginning, like, he was talking about how when he had that oyster on the boat and the guy handed it to him, and he was like, he felt like so adventurous, and like he's sticking one to the man, trying this oyster and trying something new. That's what's rebellious, is that's what's cool, is to go out and try something new, is to be adventurous and to go and do something and live your life. I mean, he was 43 when he wrote this book, and he said at the end of the book, like, my time is done. Like, I feel like I've lived my life. I've done my thing. I'm doing a thing. I'm a chef now. I'm living my dream. I'm doing what I want to do. And then he went on to write this book and go on and run the whole, like, a TV show and 2 TV shows and become a world icon. So to bring the whole point together, it's like, I just feel like that message is to just go out and live your life and try new things and experience, and don't, feel bottled up and feel contained in that your life is already lived, because there's so much that could happen or would happen if you open any of those doors that are in front of you and just explore those opportunities.
I guess for me, when thinking about that, or like looking through how you're talking about, I guess I get more of an intuitive feeling when I read through it more. It's just like, this is clearly a man writing this from an experienced, sort of taken aback part of his life. So thinking about that and what happens at the end, knowing the end of the story, it's just interesting to be like, there is so much explored. Like he said, I've already lived so many lives, and that,
and then
the
he goes
one
to
that
Japan.
I'm doing right now, I
think that was what I was talking about, was with the mission to Tokyo.
Oh yeah,
I think that's the chapter he talks about, where he's
which
like,
is
"I've
funny
lived my
because
life."
you were mentioning how his book didn't blow up, but he had to like email his the publisher.
annotation in that chapter.
Oh yeah, is there an annotation in that chapter?
Yeah, I'll read it out. This chapter in email form was what got me the attention of an editor, and soon after, the book deal that led to this book. So, like, he thought his life was lived. He went to Tokyo, wrote about it, sent it to an editor, and wrote the damn book and blew up.
Yeah, and I don't think it's no coincidence either that he also describes, I'm never home anymore now. Like, I'm home in New York, like, maybe 3 or 4 nights a year now, since I've started working on my TV show.
Yeah.
Like, and he's talking about all the different places that he's been since the book has been published, like how much he loves, like, Southeast Asia. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you've lived so many different lives already, and you've just been so hyper focused on this one thing, which is cooking for so long and running kitchens. And he had his eclectic cast of friends that he has in his life, and talking in detail about their lives, like his friends Steven and Adam and Dimitri.
The acquired and lost.
Right. So where do you go next? I fuck it. I guess I
The world.
go see every fucking thing that I could possibly can that's new and different, because I've fucking seen it all. I am chasing now things that I have not seen, because I've seen everything that I could possibly fathom. So I just need to find that one thing just over and over again, which, I mean, is a little kind of like a psychoanalyzation of Anthony Bourdain. But I just think it's interesting, because the guy did live so many lives, and his life was so full, and constantly shit was happening, good and bad, degenerate and not. And that's what makes him so fucking interesting. And like, and he describes early in the book kind of like his fascination, I think, with like eclectic figures in, the world, like Ernest Hemingway and Hunter S. Thompson. And he does kind of toe that line a little bit as far as like his perception in pop culture, I feel.
I really do think there's something that comes off in the book is very admirable about like the art of doing this chef thing, and like the secret ways of like being a chef. It's like, I mean, how he explains it with the pirates, it's very like, it's like being a samurai. Like, this sort of like secret code that everybody knows.
They all have their secret moves.
And they all have their secret moves, and then their secret techniques, and how to like do these certain things. I feel like maybe the work after all of that, I feel like there was more of a, because there's such an admiration that comes off in the book, even in the memoirs, and even in the day in the life especially, that there is such an admiration for a life that I do, from what I know, also think there is an admiration in like sharing a lot of the places of the work. Because I remember before even getting this book, I remember watching his episode on the West Bank, and then there's just a real admiration for like the people that are there, like the cooking and like sort of what the culture is and where it stands in that current place and time. There's a lot of nice work that he puts into it, and a lot of like just like genuine exploration for just like in the world of cooking. I definitely see that. So it's very interesting. We talk about that in relation to just like his passing and all of that. Just sort of like looking at all that and sort of like seeing like the many lives that this man has lived, and sort of like really looking at just where he was as a chef for so many years. I don't know, all of it's really nice. And I like I said, I love the prose. I love his writing. I later found, me and John did the New Yorker article that made him so famous.
It's like, don't eat before you read this.
And yeah, that article is basically similar to a chapter in the book where he talks about, obviously, don't eat fish on Mondays. You know,
like the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, the do's and don'ts of the kitchen. That
restaurants,
bread's
stuff like
reused. Everybody knows it. That bread's reused, and it's okay.
So, Hunter, did you have a favorite chapter when reading Kitchen Confidential?
I liked the wilderness years part quite a bit, but the thing is, the front half of this book is probably my favorite because it reads more so like a very easy to follow continuation of events, which I think is intentional. So, because in the first half, it's like it almost reads like a coming of age story. I'm not gonna lie, like that's the vibe that I was getting from a lot of it. It's like you have this young fucking punk who is kind of a piece of shit, but you kind of tell he kind of has a heart of gold in there somewhere.
Yeah.
He's kind of figuring out who he is, and he's doing a lot of bad stuff with his friends that would look really good in a movie, in a montage, which I'm sure is in. I don't even need to go see Tony to probably see that in my head. But once you start moving in through the book, like around like the halfway point, you get to the wilderness years. And once you get into that point, the writing kind of starts, in my head, when my experience reading it, kind of blending in itself like more and more. It's like there's less like crazy extreme events like the first half of the book, where he goes from the dreadnought, he goes to Mario's for a second, then he goes to school, the CIA, which reading that when I was going, I know that's the Culinary Institute, but you see CIA.
It's so cool.
on
Yeah,
your screen,
it's so
on
cool.
your- on
And
your
he
screen,
knew
on the
that too.
page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
inside the CIA. It's what a cool chapter ahead. And then it's just like, and then he just talks about the Culinary Institute. And then that awful man, I forget his name, that class that he had to take.
Oh, it's like the
Yeah,
Escoffier's class.
Yeah.
The Escoffier room or something like that.
All that to say, the wilderness years is my favorite segment of the book.
The wilderness years, that was
Yes.
your favorite?
Because it's such a stark change from where you were, where it's you're going from the dreadnought to Mario's to whatever, his like very linear progression of becoming a chef, and then he becomes a chef, and then it's like, okay, what now? What now? I've achieved my goal. I'm getting paid. How
Now we go through the journeyman years.
What's next? Because I didn't think I'd get this far, and I think it's very interesting reading that in contrast to the first part, at least for me.
I was going to say, John, what was your favorite?
Well, I feel like low-hanging fruit, my favorite chapter was the day in the life. Because I do feel like as you kind of build up reading this book, he kind of talks about being a chef and the things that he's done and going to school and all this stuff. And you're like, wow, being a chef sounds really cool. You kind of romanticize that idea. And then you read that day in the life and you're like, oh my God, dude, this guy's life his days are endless. It's just a continuous slog. He gets up hella early in the morning. He's got 10 cigarettes down by the time he gets out of bed. His wife, he's merely in passing that they're seeing each other as he's concocting his ideas for the specials for the day. And, he gets to the restaurant. He's got to work the lunch shift, and then he goes and works the dinner shift, and then he gets relieved, and he gets to go and do, the managerial stuff of the restaurant. And it's just very busy. But my favorite part of the chapter is the very last paragraph where he's going to this bar. And, it's a long night out, and he keeps saying, he's like, it's 1 a.m. I've got to be at work at 7:30. I love the song that's on the radio. I'm gonna drink a beer. These guys at the bar are talking about some shit. Oh, I'm definitely getting into this conversation. Like, he's just a dude living life and having a good time. And I just love that fucking chapter, man. I do feel like, as a whole, it perfectly encapsulates what being a chef is really about. Like, it's not, at least you see on TV with Hell's Kitchen and, Top Chef or whatever the hell those shows are.
The Bear.
Yeah, it's like they romanticize this idea of being in a kitchen, and you read about it and you're like, oh man, this sounds like hell. Like, I hate my job. I would hate to fucking do this. And obviously he does it because he loves it and he's dedicated to it, and it's clearly paid off for him. But it's nice to get a glimpse into somebody's life who is that dedicated and is very passionate about something that they love, and it's just nice to see that new perspective. It's good food for thought, I should say.
You stole my favorite chapter because I do love A Day in the Life.
It's a great chapter.
It's a great chapter. It really is. There is something about him talking about, especially like the sheets of paper for his orders, about like, oh, we ran out of tomatoes. You're just telling me now.
He calls the wrong company. He's like, I'm too embarrassed to call the right company.
Oh, yeah.
Calls another company to get some tomatoes. Oh, like, ugh.
I was like, I've definitely, I relate to that very much. But if I'm picking another chapter out of the whole book, which, look, I love the whole damn thing, but I will say Apocalypse Now, where it opens up and it's about how he steps into the bathroom and then guns are just being sold in this little tiny circle, and it's just kind of about the years where he's under the silver shadow. Yeah, this is the mafia part, the Godfather part of the book. Apocalypse Now, it's a great movie, but no, it's a great chapter that I did enjoy. It felt like a different pace than all the others, because it's sort of this now, like, he kind of writes this little like crime novel in the middle of it, where it starts kind of in the middle, where it's like, oh, we walked into a bathroom full of guns, and now he's hopping from, what is it, the Dexter's to Geno's in Baltimore, and just hopping around. Oh, you know what?
He gets sent to Baltimore.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
he's
that
like,
one
"This
failed.
place sucks,
Go down to
Baltimore
Geno's.
Sucks.
Yeah, the only people that live here in Baltimore, they either couldn't make it south to D.C. or north to New York, is what he said.
Oh, you know what? Just go to New York then. And then he ends up in New York, and then he finds all of his friends again, and sort of like a little, reunite in the middle. And I do really enjoy that chapter. It's a little bit different from all the other ones, but I do enjoy that one.
He gets off the heroin.
Yeah, and then they apparently faced bankruptcy, which I thought was hilarious, and I was like, oh my god. The tax evasion, just like every mob boss, they get hit with tax evasion. It happens every time. Look, Al Capone.
Yeah.
Look at Al Capone.
What's it got Al for? The woman Alcatraz.
I wonder who the Silver Shadow really was.
Who knows?
Yeah, he didn't name drop that at the end. He neglected that information. I'm
sure if
we
they were
looked
the
it up,
Silver
we'd
Shadow.
probably.
It's actually Al Capone.
I'm sure if we looked that up right now, it would tell us who the Silver Shroud is, or Silver Shadow.
Anthony Bourdain did a phenomenal job writing this book. I'm glad he emailed that chapter, Mission to Tokyo, to somebody to get this book written, because this honestly was one of my favorite reads ever. Like, I really did enjoy reading this book, and I don't want to say that, oh my god, it spoke to me, but it is pretty inspiring to read this book and to be like, oh man, this is a guy that, for a time, he kind of, really did have nothing, and he was, a heroin addict and a huge drug addict, and he overcame all of that and became a world-renowned chef. Like, that's awesome. And so I feel like, if he can do it, if he can make it out the mud, shit, why can't I?
Yeah, Bourdain is a deeply interesting and very complicated individual who is endlessly charismatic and had an extraordinarily interesting life.
I liked the book. The book was very good. I liked the words on the page.
I don't read, and I read this one.
I was gonna say, but this is in our efforts to read. I thought it was great. I love Anthony Bourdain's prose. He is a really good writer. I loved his article. I like a lot of his work that he's made, from the shows to the writing of this. I'm very interested into getting into the fiction novels that he wrote. That'd be very interesting. But I enjoyed this heavily. We are going to pick a next book. I don't know. We have a long list of books.
We have a long list of books, absolutely.
We're interested in.
But if you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments.
Yes, absolutely. And say if that audiobooks are reading or not. That should be the other one. Or if you have actually read this book as well. All right, this has been BOOKP0T, episode 1, Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. We will come back with another book very soon with our thoughts. And thank you for listening.